Hey, Hirsch, today's topic is about follow up, and I want to share a quick story with you about one of my clients. Sharon is a strong number two buyer. Now, you know, I use numbers to represent how quickly, how slowly someone makes up their mind. The number two is the fastest of the buyers. And so usually we tend to sell the way we buy. And this was very characteristic of Sharon, because if somebody did not go with her offer the very first time she met with them, she never followed up. She said to herself, well, they're not interested. And perhaps there was a part of her who didn't want to be pushy, aggressive, and salesy. Although I have to admit, she actually is quite salesy. But at any rate, she didn't want to waste her time on people who weren't interested. But after meeting me and understanding about the different buying styles, she decided to follow up on a couple of people that she had met the previous month. And in both cases, they signed up for her $10,000 program. Not bad for one tip, would you say?
Yeah, not bad at all.
Exactly. So today we're talking about follow-up. I'm Dr. Nancy Zier, the Sales Whisperer.
And I'm Hirsch Rephun, the holistic brand therapist.
Okay. So I know that you were actually the one who suggested we talk about follow-up. So I'm wondering if you have a particular question or whether there was something that triggered that thought in your mind.
Well, I think what triggered it was similar to your example of Sharon. I think sometimes if I don't get the reaction or the response that I'm looking for, I will just assume, that this was not a fit, and I would respect the chemistry or the whatever I'm getting back from the prospect and say, okay, well, not everybody's a fit. It's not a fit, but that isn't necessarily what's happening. And so I thought it might be fun to explore some of the ways in which we can follow up with certain personalities, because I may have misread their reluctance or disinterest even.
This is probably the biggest issue for those of us who, like you said, we stop pursuing a candidate because we didn't get an immediate positive response. So what exactly are we looking for? Is it only that the person says, yes, I'm ready to sign up? Or perhaps we need to be able to read other signs. And this is the reason why, Hirsch, I'm a strong proponent of the likability system and understanding personality styles with the numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8. Because when you know that somebody's not a number 2 buyer and you recognize that they're going to need more time to make up their mind, you don't feel that sense of, oh my goodness, they didn't say yes the first time we talked. Does that mean that they don't want my service?
Right. And I think that that we're also looking a lot of times at the job title that somebody has, and we're not factoring in this unique personal relationship. I just had a call with someone, and I was doing a kind of an audit of their personal brand, and one of the things that came out was the fact that so many of these funnels, systems, lead gen things, all of these things don't apply when you're really building a relationship. And and he suggested that perhaps they detract from it. And so the follow-up that was built in to the system that he had adopted was not in line with his personality and his brand. So the follow-up was not on brand. And he was sensing that. And I think that may be the case with a lot of us, where we are not following up based on the likability factor. Let's say we're following up based on best practices or whatever we think.
Or we're following up mistakenly because of our own style. and our own reluctance to be pushy, aggressive, and salesy. You see, Hirsch, when you're dealing with a prospect who needs to be invited and courted and dated and nurtured, is it being pushy and aggressive to ask for a second, a third, and a fourth connection time? No. Isn't that how we began to sort out people in our life romantically as to whether or not this might be a good friend or a good spouse or partner? It's not a one and done. And this is where many of us in our role as a salesperson get off track. We think it's one and done, where it really is about relationship building. And it's not that first connection is going to be it or forget it.
Yeah. And I do think that, there are a lot of ways to phrase it, but I do feel like, we use sales is your wheelhouse, and sales can be a daunting word and almost a misnomer so many times. But I think we have to look at it as it isn't the end all be all of what we are. So in other words, if I'm getting on the phone with somebody and I'm talking about what I can provide to them, how I can serve them, and how I can help them, I'm not putting on my salesman hat, because I think that's only going to strike a false note.
Yeah.
Whereas if I am approaching them sincerely and honestly, but I'm determined to convey the value of what I feel is in their best interest, it feels so much more organic.
Yeah, I am very much on a kick lately, and it's very much in alignment with my values that we need to genuinely give and serve without expectation of a transaction. The transactions will come, the right ones will come if our hearts are open and, as you say, sell the truth, and be genuine, be ourselves. The sales will happen. You don't have to push it. You just need to be present, be in that place of openness and maybe curiosity. Curiosity is such a wonderful principle to bring to a sales conversation, to any conversation. Instead of going with the expectation of, what am I going to say next? Just be curious to bring out what you're hearing.
I also find, and we should get back to this follow-up question.
Yes.
But I also find that curiosity is a better way to figure out what this prospect might need.
Yes.
Than the idea of what I provide in general.
Yeah.
I and these are all things that we learn this every day as we go. But I feel like if perhaps if we look at the follow-up process as a continuation of discovery, we want, one of the best pieces of advice I've received as an entrepreneur was to really engage in a thorough discovery process. But I think it took me a while to realize, well, it may not happen in the first conversation. And, again, back to your likability program, for someone else, it might be perfect. I might talk to them for 10 minutes. I had that experience this week where I talked to someone for 10 minutes and then they were already asking about, the program and specifics and pricing and all those things. And you're like, okay, well, that is fantastic, but that's not the norm. That doesn't mean that I failed because the next person was talking to me for an hour and didn't even know the price or didn't even ask the price.
It's so true what you're saying. And when we, again, are talking to our right prospect, we can say no wrong to that person, whereas we can say no right to the person who isn't a good fit.
Yeah.
And yet we try to squeeze ourselves into that, mold, thinking, if I just had the right things to say. And that's the reason so many sales coaches and trainers they handle this idea of objections. And they drum home this concept that you've got to be prepared and you come up with answers, and they teach how to handle objections. There are no objections when the candidate is right. When the candidate isn't the right person, there can be a slew of objections. And I don't care how gifted you are, it then becomes manipulation. Like, if I just did the right thing, I'm going to like twist and turn and manipulate you into, saying yes. But that isn't going to serve you or me, because we'll both regret it. I promise.
Another way to frame follow-up is in terms of outcomes. So if we really are sincerely invested in the outcomes that they're looking for, then the advice we're going to give them is directly related to the outcomes that they've expressed. Like, I could say everybody wants to make more money, and that's probably true. And everybody wants to be paid what they're worth. That's also true. But what if there's something that they're saying that isn't really about just that, or it's about the way they want to make that money?
Yes. And again, you and I are actually looking for the person who wants to make a difference in the world. Oh, they want to get paid for it. I totally agree. We want to be paid well for our investment in our occupation and our credential. But for the people that you and I have earmarked as our special clients, these are people who are mission driven. They have a cause, that there is a message that they have that they want to transmit, and they want to make changes to people's lives that result in better situations. So it isn't just about the money. And so we can't make that assumption, which again, so many people assume. People are buying based upon what it is that I think is the value. I've got a companion here.
That's right. Well, a dog wants to be heard, and the dog with the loudest bark gets the attention.
That's right. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Except when it comes to follow-up.
That's right. That's right. Well, this is another interesting, perhaps another interesting thing is the pacing of the follow-up. How do we manage the various personalities needing various levels of follow-up? So it does create, it almost feels like it's creating another offer for each personality. And we know you should have your offer, and that's really your offer, and that's better.
It's not a different offer. It's different timing, different pacing, different emphasis on the value of the offer. Because again, these 4 styles that I talk about are based on values. And hence that quick decision maker, the number 2, their value is speed and efficiency. Whereas the number 8, which is the slowest of the decision makers, their value is on information and comprehensive knowledge and mastery. Very different values. So hence the follow-up has to be based upon who we're speaking with. And so let me talk about the number 8 buyer, because this is a person who needs what's called the drip campaign. And drip campaign, not in terms of, let me tell you about testimonials and let me share it with you, all my wonderful gobbledygook. No, it's about information. And so when you share the information, that's what they feel like. You get me? We're alike.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's maybe where we want to end up, is that we want to find those points of commonality with the person, and we can be and we can be complementary to one another.
Yes.
I could be a 2 or a 4, or they could be an 8 or a 6. But if we can get on the same page and we can unite our skills and talents and all of these things in the service of the outcome that they're looking for, we can alleviate not just their stress, but our stress. I think, we spend a lot of time trying to alleviate the stress of our prospects and clients. And in doing so, we should alleviate our own.
You know, both people benefit when we are true to ourselves. Both people benefit. So
Very-
there's lots more we could cover with follow-up. Maybe we'll tackle that next time as well. Whoa.
Oh, I'm glad that's a lawnmower, by the way. I was starting to
That's
feel
the
like that was
landscaper
the
outside, not the
rapture.
dog.
I didn't know what that was. I was like,
It
these
seems
days,
like
it could be anything. I'm glad it was a lawnmower. That's good.
all right. Well, we do need to end this. For those of you who are observing a holiday this weekend, we're sending warm wishes for a good holiday celebration. And we'll join you next Friday. This is Dr. Nancy Zaire, the Sales Whisperer.
And Hirsch Repun, the holistic brand therapist, wishing you a wonderful weekend.
To your sales success.